Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's me, Dr. Kaz. I have thought about it, and I feel like we're going to finish up this chapter here. And so anyways, I want to welcome everybody back. And we're going to jump here into the large intestine, not literally, obviously, and we're going to continue on with our studies of the lower gastrointestinal tract here. Okay, so let's get into the large intestine. We're going to talk about the different segments of the large intestine. And one of the things I do want to mention as we study the large intestine is how the large intestine is going to have an alternating pattern when we discuss its position in the abdominal cavity. All right, we'll get into that in a moment here. All right, but we'll go through each portion. And when I talk about the alternating aspects of the large intestine, we're going to see that there is a pattern between different regions of the large intestine alternating between retroperitoneal and intraperitoneal. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first portion of our large intestine, which is the cecum. Okay, and this is pretty much what the ileum is going to empty into. All right, and so it's basically a sac, all right, that is intraperitoneal. Right, it is going to be down by your right hip, so we call that the right lower quadrant there. All right, and so as the ileocecal valve, all right, which is initiated by certain reflexes, it will open and close and allow the passage of chyme to move from the ileum into the cecum. Now, inferior to the cecum is going to be our vermiform appendix. Now, there's lots of theories as to what that structure was at one point. Did it have some sort of physiological value? All right, neither here nor there. The only time I really discuss the appendix is usually when somebody is having some lower right abdominal pain, and that's a sign of appendicitis. Initially, you can start to get what we call periumbilical pain, pain around your belly button, and then it can migrate over to the right also. Okay, but the vermiform appendix is this small projection coming off the inferior portion of the cecum. It too is intraperitoneal. All right, but it is believed that it has the good type of bacteria there. All right, and there is a significant amount of bacteria that resides within the large intestine, which is a natural flora, or it helps with the digestive processes there. All right, but we'll also notice in the appendix region a fair amount of lymphatic tissue here. And as you know, the lymphatic tissue is going to play a role in our immune response. Okay, so keep that in mind, all right, as we move through this chapter here. And when we go superior from the cecum and the vermiform appendix, we're going to move through the large intestine, also known as the colon here. And we're all familiar, because we studied it a little bit in Bio 210, that it has a U-shaped kind of configuration, all right? But it's inverted, upside down, okay? So as we ascend or move upwards from the cecum, all right, we're going to hit the first portion of the large intestine. And we call that the ascending colon here. And the ascending colon is retroperitoneal, so it does sit behind the serous membrane of the peritoneum. Right, and it travels superiorly up towards the liver, and it'll come to a turn, all right, 90-degree turn, and we refer to that turn as the hepatic flexure, also known as the right colic flexure. So as we get up to the right hepatic, or the hepatic flexure, okay, we're now going to have a portion of the colon that is going to go from the right side of your body to the left side of your body. And we call that the transverse colon. Transverse colon, remember, keeping up with that alternating pattern, is intraperitoneal. And it's going to move from the right side of your body over to the left side of your body, which it will terminate and come in contact with another 90-degree turn. And we call that the splenic flexure, or the left colic flexure. And from there, the colon will make its inferior route, all right, down towards the anus there. And that portion of the colon is known as the descending colon. Again, alternating, we go back to a retroperitoneal position, and it will travel all the way down, all right, to the sigmoid colon. And this is where the large intestine kind of takes almost like an S type of traveling pattern back towards the pelvis. So the sigmoid colon is going to basically connect the descending colon to the rectum. And so that position there from the descending colon to the rectum is going to take the colon through the pelvic cavity. Again, we then return to the intraperitoneal or alternating pattern here, all right, and where the sigmoid colon ends at the rectum, and the rectum is the final portion of our large intestine that basically is going to store feces before it is expelled from our body here, all right? And so the rectum is, again, retroperitoneal with our alternating pattern here going on. And think of it as just a storage site loaded with muscles there to help facilitate the movement of feces through the anus and then eventually outside of the body. And you'll notice when we look at the rectum that it too is going to have these transverse folds, all right, which we call rectal valves, all right? But again, these rectal valves help facilitate the movement of feces through the body here. So here you can kind of see, all right, the movement patterns, all right, of the large intestine. Here's the cecum, you get your vermiform appendix hanging off inferiorly, all right, both of those are going to be intraperitoneal. Then you have the ascending colon, which is retroperitoneal. Here is the right colic flexure or the hepatic flexure, all right, and then our transverse colon, all right, which is going to be intraperitoneal. Then we hit our left colic flexure, also known as the splenic flexure, moving down, descending down towards our feet here. We have our descending colon, which is again retroperitoneal, all right, which terminates here on this kind of twisty-turny portion of the intestine. That's our sigmoid colon, which is going to be intraperitoneal, which terminates here in the rectum, the storage site for feces before it is expelled, all right, from our body. And this structure here is again retroperitoneal. Okay. All right, and then the final portion here of the large intestine is the anal canal. All right. Now, the anal canal is going to be lined with our stratified squamous epithelium. And I'm sure you know by now, but let me remind you, stratified epithelium is going to be located in areas that endure mechanical stress. All right. And so if you don't think that moving feces out of your body is mechanical stress tissue-wise, it is. All right. So we put stratified epithelium there, all right, to protect that tissue there. So it is specifically lined by that stratified squamous epithelium. And then the anal canal is surrounded by a group of muscles which we named the levator ani muscles. And they basically make up the floor of your pelvis. All right, if these muscles weren't there, all of your guts would spill out of your pelvis. All right, so they make up the pelvic floor here. And the anal canal pierces through and travels through those muscles, and they help with the facilitation of that movement of the waste from your body here. Okay, so you'll notice you'll have in the anal canal these long, what we call longitudinal ridges, all right? And we refer to those as anal columns. In between, we'll have these depression structures called anal sinuses, and that is where mucus will be produced. And again, you can see a pattern here. Mucus is going to be used as a lubricant. Makes sense. You want to have plenty of mucus in this area for the passage of the feces through your body. Now, there's two sphincters here, and I mentioned them in the previous video. We have the internal anal sphincter and the external anal sphincter. The internal anal sphincter is made up of smooth muscle, obviously involuntary, all right? We don't have any control over that muscle, but we do have control over the external anal sphincter muscles. That's made of skeletal muscle, okay? This is the one that you have learned to control during the potty training or bathroom or toilet training process here, right? Normally, these muscles are going to be contracted, so the sphincters will be closed, all right? But obviously, during the process of defecation, all right, when you're trying to move the feces out of your body, they will relax, all right, and allow for the movement of the feces out of your body there. So here you can see, all right, in the anal canal here, all right, how we have, all right, your rectal valves here and located throughout, all right, and they will help, all right, with the passage and the movement of the feces out of the rectum through the anus. And then when we get down here, all right, in the anus, you can see how you have these longitudinal ridges here, all right, and then in between, all right, you will have these depressions. Those are the anal sinuses where we produce the mucus here, all right, and then you can also see you have the internal anal sphincter, which is made up of smooth muscle, so it's involuntary. And then you have the external anal sphincter, which is made up of skeletal muscle, that's voluntary. And at a part of the external anal sphincter here, as we move upwards, you can notice that it's part of the levator ani muscles, right, that help to make up your pelvic floor. Okay, so to finish off the large intestine here, all right, talked about it when we were looking at the models here, how on the outside of the large intestine, you have a strand, all right, of smooth muscle tissue called the tinea coli. All right, the tinea coli literally act as a waistband here. So when they are actually contracted, all right, they will bunch up and create these sacs, which we call haustra. Also at times referred to as saculations. So when you're looking at the models there, you'll notice that throughout the large intestine, there are this bunching of the large intestine. That's the haustra there. And you'll also notice, all right, some globs of fat that hang off externally off of the large intestines. All right, that is called the Omental Appendices, similar to our greater and lesser omentum, which is that loaded with adipose tissue there. All right, but those omental appendices will hang off, all right, the large intestine, all right, all throughout. And so folks have often wondered, what's the purpose again? We know what the purpose is for any type of fat tissue, all right? It's going to act as cushioning, all right, insulation, also a site of storage for energy for the muscles here. So the majority of the large intestine is going to be lined by, yes, you guessed it, more simple columnar epithelium, okay? So again, absorption, secretion, filtration. So we're going to go with absorption and secretion because throughout the simple columnar epithelium, we have our goblet cells. And as you know, the role of the goblet cells is to produce the mucin, converts it to mucus for more lubrication. As we start to compact and start to form, all right, that chyme is now going to be transitioning, all right, into a more solid structure, and we transition from the chyme into the feces. But during that time, we're still trying to absorb, all right, the majority of it's going to be water, all right, and we're still going to try to absorb. Every little bit counts, electrolytes and our vitamins there, okay? But one of the things we will notice in the large intestine is that there are no intestinal villi. So we get rid of the intestinal villi here, all right? But we will have plenty of our intestinal glands here. Again, more mucin for, yes, lubrication here, okay? And one of the other things we'll notice are our lymphatic nodules. Now, we talked about this before when we were talking about lymphatic tissue. And again, as you know, lymphatic tissue is present to initiate the immune response. And all throughout our digestive tract, we have much lymphatic tissue there, all right, to combat any pathogens that might be encountered along the digestive tract, okay? So we'll see interspersed throughout the tissue there, all right, these lymphatic nodules, all right, inside of the lamina propria there, okay? And of course, we'll still have our 2 layers of smooth muscle throughout the large intestine. Obviously, all right, we will see a longitudinal layer and our transverse or circular layer there to facilitate the movement of food throughout the large intestine. And we can see on the outside, all right, of the large intestine, our tinea coli there. So here you can kind of see, all right, the different layers here, all right, or tunics, all right, for the large intestine. The inner layer is going to be the mucosa with the epithelial tissue there. But notice, I like this picture here because it really shows you, all right, how we have, all right, our lymphatic, excuse me, not lymphatic, but our vascular tissue. Okay, the arterioles, the venules, and the capillary beds in between. And then we'll also still see, all right, the lymphatic capillaries intermixed here. Again, trying to absorb as much as we possibly can, all right, during this process or the movement of our chyme and digestive food products through the large intestine. All right, here's a nice histological slide. You can really appreciate the number of goblet cells, because if you notice, you see a lot of translucencies throughout the intestinal villi here. All right, again, that's because we have upped the number of goblet cells in this portion of our digestive tract to really start to pour on more mucus so we can facilitate that lubrication effect happening. All right, let's finish up this chapter by just going over a few of our slides here, all right, that you've seen in the atlas. Okay, so we have our innermost layer here, all right, the mucosa layer, and you can see nicely the intestinal villi here, these projections going up. All right, and on the inside, you can see here's our vascular structures. And over in this structure here, you can see the green is representing some of our lymphatic structures here. All right, a couple of things that we haven't really talked about too much, all right, is going to be some of the nerve structures here. All right, and the one that I want to draw your attention to is the nerve structure here called the Auerbach's plexus, way down here. All right. You have another nervous system subdivision that we really haven't talked about, and that's called the enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is basically the digestive system's nervous system, okay? And so throughout, all right, the digestive system, you're going to have these clusters, all right, of nerves, all right, and different layers of the digestive tract here to help facilitate the digestive process and the motility and and facilitate the help with the chemical breakdown here. So you can see down in this region here, all right, you have your Auerbach's or the myenteric nerve plexus. And if you notice, all right, it is located right in between the outer two layers here, all right? So you've got, or the muscularis layer, because it's going to help to facilitate the movement, all right, of both the longitudinal and the circular layers here, okay? Your circular layer is going to be the innermost layer. The longitudinal layer will be the outer layer. And then finally, you have your serosal layer here, all right? That's the outermost layer here. All right, then finally here, we kind of zoom in a little bit closer to kind of see some of the structures here. Again, we're dealing with the mucosal layer. That's the innermost layer. You can see the nice villi, all right, throughout. A nice picture here of the lacteal. That's going to be the lymphatic portion here of the digestive system, in which it's going, the contents, all right, you should know by now, is going to be lipids and lipid-rich nutrients here that are going to go into the lymphatic system, and then eventually it'll be returned back into the circulatory system here, okay? Then we have our nice capillaries here, all right, which will again be nutrient-rich, all right? But at the same time, it will be deoxygenated blood that will eventually find its way over to the liver, okay? And then down here, all right, we've got our muscularis mucosal layer here. And then you can see we have a nice little crypt here with our intestinal glands at the base, because again, we'll talk more about that in lecture, all right, where we're producing some of our additional enzymes and whatnot. All right, that concludes this video. This one's kind of short, all right, but I needed to take a break because of the last video. And I hope that you learned something from this. I always enjoy presenting these for you. Keep an eye out for some future videos here. I will let you know of any that are going to be making their way to you folks. And of course, like always, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or to ask me. All righty, folks, until the next time we meet, I hope everything goes well.